Okay, so first, housekeeping, to mention, we have a Blue Team Slack channel in our Slack. If I'm going to end up pasting all of the material there eventually, I'll email you guys all of my slides once I'm done. I know this is just the first hour, but I keep on adding more and more stuff as I think of it, because eventually I want this to be like an 8-hour training. So I didn't want to send you guys the slides yet because they're not really done. But they should be by the time, I mean, we're done with this. We might skip over a few things, and we might, it's possible we might go to a 5th Monday or a little bit later on the last day, just depending on how all of this goes. So I'm going to go through all of this like none of you actually know what the kill chain is, because if we skip over that and you don't really have a good understanding, it won't really affect the overall training, but you'd kind of be at a disadvantage if you wanted to tie anything else into it in the future. So as a lot of you know already, I've worked for an MSSP for a couple different ones for several years now. I've had customers that want to craft all of their defenses around this, you know, illustrious kill chain thing. And they have an idea of that they want to use the kill chain for something. They want to tie, you know, metrics to it. They know they want to stop ransomware, and that has something to do with the kill chain, but they never really have any fully articulated plan on what that actually looks like. Well, many of them want to use it just because it's a buzzword that the C-levels like using. So today we'll go ahead and start, and we'll give an overview of the kill chain, and then we'll move on to examples of these use cases. I have in here ransomware, lateral movement, data exfil, and then I've started moving stuff to an OSINT use case on its own, because I've been able to find enough with that it can become kind of its own use case. Sometimes threat and attack methodologies don't really fit into this kill chain, and we'll cover a little bit of that as well. We'll go over specific pieces and parts of the attack at each step, what defensive mitigations you can implement to protect against them, and then also some monitoring and specific alerting to go with those as well. All right. So this is like an overview of the intrusion kill chain. Sometimes it's called the cyber kill chain, and that's, you know, where it got its buzziness, drink to everything, you know, what we make fun of it for all the time. But what it's defined as is a model for actionable intelligence when defenders, right, we're supposed to be using this for defense, align enterprise defensive capabilities to the specific processes an adversary undertakes to target that enterprise. So targeted attacks, APTs, whatever you want to call them. And it's comprised of 7 different steps that are described in the Lockheed Martin white paper. So I'm not going to read, obviously, that whole white paper. I'm just going to go over like a broad overview of what step, like the description of each step. And so stop me if you have any questions.
The link to the white paper, is that in the show note or the class notes that you sent out, the Google Doc? Is that in there?
Okay. It is not in the syllabus, but it will be in the slides when I hand those out.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
And for those of us in the future who are watching this, those can be found somewhere online, like SlideShare or something in the future.
Yeah. I haven't put any of this out yet, though. So
yeah, we have to think about this in perpetuity, because people 5 years from now will be watching this. You know,
I don't know about that, but
I guarantee somebody
will. So the first step is recon or reconnaissance. It's when the attacker researches, identifies, and selects targets. They crawl internet websites looking for things like, looking through mailing lists. They look for email addresses. They look for social relationships, information on specific technologies. A big resource for that, an example is LinkedIn and things like previous breaches. The second is weaponization. That's some kind of automation. So it's like a remote access tool, a Trojan, and then it's coupled with a malicious payload. And then, files like PDF, Microsoft Office documents serve as that weaponized deliverable. And then 3 is delivery. That's when it's actually, that weaponized deliverable is actually delivered. And it's the transmission of that weapon to the targeted environment. So the 3 most common vectors are usually email attachments and websites are the top 2. And then USB drives kind of falls at a lower third. 4 is exploitation. So after the payload's delivered, the exploit code is triggered. Most often, the exploitation targets either an application, operating system vulnerability, but it could just exploit the users themselves or be like some kind of auto exec code. 5 is installation. Again, we'll cover this, but a lot of times there is no installation step. But you can also consider, something running in memory as kind of a pseudo installation, right? Whatever it is, it's the step that allows that adversary to maintain persistence inside that environment. The 6th step is command and control. So typically, compromised hosts will beacon outbound to some kind of internet controller C2C channel. So that allows the attacker to have like a server client-based architecture, so they aren't manually controlling each endpoint individually. Makes it easier on them. So, they have a further and deeper reach. They're not just, picking and choosing and getting, one person reboots a box and then they've lost everything, right? And then 7 is actions on objectives. And this is the last one when the objective has been completed or might just be in the process of being completed. So that could be things like data corruption, exfiltration, theft, using the endpoint as like a hotbox in a botnet, something to pivot internally, or a multitude of other reasons. So here are some top common threats. These are usually at the top of most people's minds when creating a plan for defense, if you work anything on use cases. So according to the 2017 Verizon DBIR, 88% of breaches fall into these 9 categories. These were listed back in 2014, and they're pretty much the exact same thing. So almost 4 years later, and we're still worried about the same stuff. First is cyber espionage. Attacks linked to state-sponsored actors, and usually what people like to use for an excuse for most attribution. Second, denial of service. 98% of those are targeted towards larger enterprise. So if it's a smaller mom and pop shop, for the most part, you don't really have to worry about a DOS attack unless it's like widespread. 3 is crimeware. Ransomware falls into this category, and it's actually climbed from the 22nd most common form of malware up to the 5th from 2014 till now. And then the rest of them kind of just go down from there. Pretty self-explanatory. The miscellaneous error one, you can, like, an example of that was kind of like the typo that brought down Amazon. When was that? End of 2016, I think. So what I want to do is with each threat that we go through, I've technically broken them down into 5 categories per step. And so that way we can start mapping out what defenses we need to systematically build. And first, to do that, you have to know what the malicious action is. I think a big downfall of what the cyber kill chain is, at the beginning was they're like, oh, this is all the things that can go wrong, but there was nothing already crafted to tie each bad thing to each good thing that you could do. So not only should we worry about defending against, those malicious actions, you can't always defend against all of that. You need to also implement correct monitoring and alerting. So that'll allow you to take reactive steps, aid in IR processes if the proactive ones have failed. Almost every defensive and monitoring step we'll cover is free for the most part. There's no gimmicks or anything, just free settings that can be modified, added, technologies implemented at no cost other than the time, right, of the security or admin team spent configuring them, or, you know, like Windows licenses, but for the most part, you know, you'll already have those. A very underutilized tool included in almost every enterprise-sized organization, you know, since the majority of them use Windows, is group policy. Since that's free and easy to walk everyone through, a handful of the demos will focus on changing settings there. We'll show how the event viewer and hopefully some sort of SIM will also play a part in detecting malicious actions in these use cases. I know not everybody's seen it already. I'm going to see if I can show you. Maybe. Can everybody see that nice, pretty spreadsheet?
Woot, colors.
Okay, yay. All right, so this is what I built this training on. It's just kind of like an open thing for people to add stuff and use. And I just keep on building more and more on it as I go along. And then I just have the different use cases down here. And I'm filling in as much as I humanly possible, and, you know, build the training around it. So there's that link will be in there too. All right, so no two networks are the same. Anyone that's been in more than one environment, whether you're defending it, attacking it, whatever, it's never been defended or attacked the same way twice. So this isn't really KillChain, it's more of a kill roller coaster. While it says months, you know that local privilege escalation can be that maybe that's minutes. I think they're just giving like a worst case scenario. This may take months. It's definitely not always going to be months. And this is from Microsoft. So they have two little loop-de-loops. This is the low privilege lateral movement. And then they also have this high privilege lateral movement. This is like when the attacker is already on the inside of the network. They have this evil little devil guy riding the roller coaster. He's the one hacking all the things. And that includes, you know, higher level privilege escalation, code execution, and whatever the end goal might be. There's a lot of people that bash the kill chain already, and rightfully so. There's a lot of different attack paths that you can't shoehorn into a 7-step program. Even these two roller coasters for Microsoft aren't going to be able to cover each and every situation, but both are a good basis to see what does and doesn't fit, and you can use them to craft a lot of different defensive strategies. Of course, this model helps Microsoft as they tie a handful of their different technologies and services they provide into each step.
And from what I gather on these things, that sometimes, you know, if you're doing asset recon, you may actually go up and down or back and forth on, you know, that's why some people don't like the loop. It's because you're not always good. You know, you'll always be doing asset recon. You'll always be doing OSINT. You'll always be doing that. So you may actually back up in certain levels
or bounce around and not even go around the loop. But
and there's no timeline on this. So, I mean, it could take you, you know, a month to go from remote code execution to, you know, local privilege escalation or something. There's no definite guideline. You've got weeks down there, right? But it could be hours. It could be minutes. Yeah. So
I think it was just a guess on their part to make it look good. Because yeah, definitely
makes sense.
Okay, so next is setup. I hope a lot of you already have things set up, but I figured we'd try and all be on the same page as much as we can, because I'm hoping you can walk through all of this stuff with me when we do all of our hands-on stuff. So I'm going to go over what I currently have. Some of these I have duplicate of because I have like a DC that's already been promoted and all of my group policies already set up on. And then I also have a server that will work through doing a DC promo on. That stuff you shouldn't have done yet. So we'll walk through the DC promo. The first time I gave this, I was told, well, I had a very broad range of people in the class, and I was told a lot of the beginning Windows stuff I went too fast on, just because I assumed everybody already knew how to promote a domain controller and do all the Windowsy type stuff. So I'll walk through it. If you have any questions or want me to slow down, tell me. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of blast forward and assume you know all of it. And we will try and find one of my many 5,000 VMs I have. This one.
I Windows all the things, so.
Okay, all right.
I can definitely Windows all the things. So it's interesting. So if you need any ISOs for free, there's a link in the class notes as well, or the syllabus. Modern.ie is also available if you want to do any kind of things like that. Modern.ie allows you to download 180-day free versions of Windows, which is great for testing purposes. Yeah, there you go, 179 days. So
and when that license runs out, you can still use it.
Yep. They still give you updates and everything. So.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah. I guess Microsoft realized it's better for you to take something legit and get updates for it than to try to pirate the hell out of it. So.
Yeah, for sure.
I just wouldn't suggest installing it as bare metal on your machines. Just run a VM with Linux or something. So.
Ah, shit. I didn't mean to hit yes on that. So this is our Windows server. We're logged in. It is just a Windows server. I haven't done anything else to it other than in vCenter, I added 2 NICs. Okay, so I have my local to my box network, which is going to be the 172.16 network, and that's the NIC that all of my VMs can talk to each other on. And then this is my lab network on my home lab that can actually talk to the internet. And we're going to use both of them. I don't think I actually ran updates on this because I only created this VM earlier today. So if it pops up saying updates, I completely kind of just slacked on that.
So Ms. Vampycat's got a question. Should she set up a new Windows server? She already has her promoted with DC promoted, AD running, and communicating with a Windows 7 client.
Nope, that's perfect. That you just don't have to do this part then. Where are you seeing the question at? Do I not see the chat?
It's in the chat.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. There we go. Perfect. All right, now I can see. All right, so we are going to add roles and features. You can just ignore all of this. I'm going to do a role-based. This thing that we got going on because I didn't rename it.
It made this way easier than when I had to deal with Windows 2000 server. Oh
yeah, you don't have to do anything on the command line.
Sweet Lord, this is way easier.
It's pretty fantastic. So like it was 2000, anything earlier than 2008? It was like 2003 and below, you had to do a DC promo. Actually, that was faster because all you had to do is DC promo and like type in a password, I think.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, okay. This you have to configure a bunch of shit. But you just have to select on Active Directory Domain Services. It's going to install all of this stuff. So it does snap-ins, the Active Directory Administrative Center, which is a nice tool that you do stuff with. Some lightweight directory tools that it just adds because there's PowerShell in here. This is all the admin tools. And you can also do with, I think it's 2008 R2 and above, there's a lot of remote access commands that you can run on Windows servers. So after that, we'll click on Add Features, hit Next.
So we probably should say, if you're trying to run headless on this, this is outside the scope of the class. If you want to run 2016 headless, we applaud you for your PowerShell. Awesome,
if you want to do all of this on server core on the PowerShell command line, you go. I'm not. I am not great at PowerShell. I really enjoy the server GUI, so we're not going to do that. So leave all of this as default. Hit next, and hit next again. We're going to restart. Yes, install. Do. So any questions so far? I'm not like talking super fast or anything, right?
Yep, now's the time to ask, because she's got a little downtime waiting for the server to happen. So
good.
Just to predict the future, what are you going to be using the two split networks for?
Let me think. I don't remember. I think mostly it was for updates. I don't remember. I know I needed it, so I added it on there.
All will become clear as we continue. I hope.
All right, so after that's done, hopefully everybody's is at least semi-close to mine. You'll have this little thing up top here. That's going to be a task. It's a post-deployment configuration option thing. And you can promote the server to a domain controller. So we are going to, we don't already have an existing domain. We don't already have an existing forest. We're going to be adding a new forest. And I already have test.local as another one. So you can really do this however you want and just, make it your own. Depends on if you're going to use it in the future or whatever. So we're going to make a breaksec domain. Oh, sorry. Breaksec.local. Oh gosh. OSX Active Directory, I'm sorry.
Apparently it's easy. It's just like you go into the control panel, or you go into like users and log on something, and it's like join domain, and you just put the IP of the domain and it'll join.
It seems like the most recent stuff is to actually not bind it, but instead use a kind of interesting way where it matches the local password to the domain and generates Kerberos tickets, but is not strictly bound.
Right. I don't think at the office we use a lot of Macs with AD and stuff, and we have something called Enterprise Connect that automatically syncs all the passwords between AD and the system itself, and it seems to work fairly painlessly. There's some people that still haven't figured out how to use it. I just blame it on the fact that they're salespeople. So, but it seems to work fairly flawlessly for me. Apologize for any salespeople who are in here.
Yeah, and one thing that I did learn, so a second ago you saw the error come up that said that I couldn't do a single name domain. Everything, now the new standard is you're supposed to have it as a internet, like a fully qualified domain name, so not .local. Now you're supposed to have a .com or whatever as your internal domain name, as opposed to the .local. They changed that a couple of years ago, and I'm still just enjoy doing the .local. But that's why it gave me the error, because it at least wanted you to put a something. We had a conversation a while back of somebody actually trying to migrate things from a single name domain to a new one.
Was it difficult?
I don't know that he got anywhere with it.
Oh,
I never heard anything. I can't remember if it was on Twitter or in Slack. Why is this taking so long? I wonder if we can like come back to that. I can't remember what the next slide is. Hold on.
well, we can catch.
We can look at. Hold on. We can look at the other ones. So. Test DC. That's Windows 10. Sorry if I make everybody crazy with this too. Okay, so here's my Kali box. You go ahead and start your Kali box up too, because we'll be doing some stuff in that a little bit later.
So if you're using something else like Pen2 or Black Arch, or if you're trying to use pen tester framework, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's not supported, but it's going to be outside the scope of the class. So
yeah, and I think probably in those distros, I would think the majority of what we're going to run is going to be on there, or it's going to be a really quick git pull or git clone. We'll use Responder and the Harvester, and I thought there was another one, maybe not. So on your Kali instance, I noticed I needed two. Two nicks just because I was, I was pulling stuff off the internet for tools. So I have, you know, my two nicks here, and later on in the Responder portion of it, we'll need to know which Ethernet is which.
So Dan is asking in chat, he's got a 2016 server. Does it make any difference as what functional level we set the DC as?
Nope.
Okay.
Just I've never used 2016 before. So I wanted to at least be comfortable when I was teaching. So that's why I used 2012.
They do a fairly decent job with future proofing. So yeah, I would imagine that the interface isn't changing much between 2012 and 2016. So.
Like I'm most comfortable with 2008, but that's already pretty old. So, So this is directory services restore mode password. This isn't going to be anything that you probably ever have to use, but I would save it nonetheless. Yeah, I know. I don't know why they give you this error and don't give you the option to set up DNS when you're in here, but
it doesn't matter which DNS you use. You could use Google's or OpenDNS or something, right? Or if you have a local
you can use whatever you want, whatever it auto assigns from your provider. You can walk through setting up some DNS stuff if you want to. We won't do that in this class, but if you have any questions on that, I've done a lot of Windows DNS before.
Right.
This is the NetBIOS name, which we'll learn about later. Things shouldn't be using NetBIOS anymore, but they do all the time. So on a production system, if you're creating a new domain, or if you are trying to fix a domain that you're currently on, like if you happen to ever do any Windows admin stuff, this isn't necessarily security related, but it's kind of a good thing to know. There are performance and I don't know if there's security reasons, but I know there's performance reasons of where these should go and why. I don't remember even what they are anymore, but a lot of times they either need to be on specific volumes or specific, you know, FSMO roles of a server. So we're going to make sure that's correct and click Get Next, and it's going to install and reboot.
So Jason says restore mode password can be used to get local admin on a DC, make it safe, and rotate it.
Thank you. I was gonna say that and then forgot.
Cool. Okay.
Do
yeah,
not
28.
Damn
it. I got to change my password now. Thanks, Mark.
Yes. Yeah, make it something very long and complex and treat it like it's a domain admin.
Word.
I wonder if this is taking a while because I didn't put enough memory in it.
Why'd you put only about a gig or something?
I think it has 4.
Oh, that should be more than plenty.
Or maybe 2.
Depends on how many cores you gave it. So Jerry's asking, what about Kerberos tickets? Are they okay to still use, or do we have to go to a certain version?
I don't know a whole lot about Kerberos ticketing. Or like the underlying auth.
Well, let's open it up to everyone else. Does anybody have any knowledge about the Kerberos tickets that, any specific versions to watch out for? You can also ask that question in our Slack channel, and I'm sure we can have some people in the red team or pen testing channels that would be able to answer that question for you.
Isn't there? I thought there was 2 different versions.
There's
like an old Windows 2000 and prior version of Kerberos.
Right.
After 2008 or 2, it was the change when it went from.
Was it? Okay.
Vista, yeah, it was the Vista channel.
Oh, right. And we're going to ignore all of the security settings on this domain controller just so it will install and reboot.
Yeah, nobody uses that security stuff. That's just
that's a good point. The whole golden ticket thing I should probably include in this training somewhere too. It's obviously not going to be today, but
yeah. Yeah, when you set your DC up, especially a new one, in normal cases, there's going to be some hardening done. You're going to want to run the vuln scanner against it. You're going to want to run your CIS benchmarks.
And a lot of times you're not going to be setting up a new domain because you're going to already have one that's probably already extremely fucked up that you have to fix.
Explicit tag.
Sorry. Sometimes I forget.
No, I
start beeping myself.
You're gonna inherit. Yeah, you're probably gonna inherit a domain or something like that. And once the domain is set up, it's one of those machines that they're gonna hassle you to not ever touch or scan because bad things will happen, imagined or real, if you even so much as sneeze on it. So. Hardening it, you really can't harden a DC after it's already been put into operation because things tend to not work anymore after if you blindly harden it. I can attest to that. So yeah, you're pretty much going to inherit an unhardened box usually. Good link.
So while this is okay, let me go back there. While that is rebooting, and hopefully yours is rebooting faster than mine, I'll go ahead and start with the first use case, because it's like 4 or 5 slides in before we actually have to do anything on the domain controller. So the major one we're going to start with is ransomware. A lot of people, that's like the thing that's top on their mind, just because we've seen such an increase in the last several years. And not just this one, but as we go through all of them, it's the goal to, continually make each additional action more difficult for the attacker. So a lot of the stuff that we cover People are going to argue, well, that's not going to fix X, or that's not going to fix Y. No, it's not. But I mean, defense in depth, blah, blah, blah. It's like that funnel that, you stop as much as you can, and then you keep on working your way down. I'm going to be skipping a lot of steps that aren't relevant. Sometimes I'll combine some steps in the interest of not actually showing you 500 slides that, pertain to that Excel document. So we'll go on to the next one. Sweet. So first up is reconnaissance. Even before any kind of attack or incident is happening, you should start prioritizing and taking action on what might happen. Risk analysis, business impact analysis, threat analysis, all the analysis of that come into play when you're designing a defensive strategy. And really, that's the whole basis of defensive security. So many people just stop at the basics or can't really handle basics. They think the first couple of steps of the kill chain aren't really where they defend against, since it's kind of out of your control. They're in their hoodies, plotting against you. What can you possibly do at that step? But when you start to break down each of these threats, you can see the steps that you can actually take. So the malicious action in this case, like the attacker is going to obtain email addresses, technologies used, and create an organizational profile based on that information, especially if it's a targeted ransomware attack. And a lot of that OSINT stuff, I moved to that other use case that we'll cover at the end. But OSINT for some companies is more difficult than others. If you're in a more public light, or that's maybe what you do, that information's obviously going to be out there. But the more information on specific internal stuff that's out there that an attacker can use is going to make their phishing campaigns that much more effective. So this poor guy has been on like several slides of mine so far, just because it's a really good example of stuff that you can find. So all of these are off of when I did the social engineering CTF at DEF CON a couple years ago. And it's super fun. Highly recommend it to anybody that wants to do it. Even if you're going to go watch, it's very, very interesting to watch the CTF. So what they do is once you qualify, there's like an interview process that you have to go to qualify for the CTF. They give you a company. So in this case, the year was around telecommunication companies. So my company that I got was Frontier. So they do like DSL services, at least here. They brought up a whole bunch of Verizon lines. They do telephone services, all that kind of stuff. And not only do they give you the company, they give you all of these flags that you're supposed to find with OSINT, right? Like what kind of computers do they use? What VPN do they use? Trash services, just this huge list of like 30 different flags that you're supposed to write this giant ass report on. This picture of this guy was on their public Facebook account, or their like marketing Facebook thing. It was a call center, some like employee appreciation day or whatever. You could tell that they used, he was a Viking fan. You could tell what model of Dell PC they were using. You could tell that there was Adobe Reader open in the like Windows, I think it was a Windows 7 desktop. And just by that picture that they had, the company had used on social media. So all of that kind of stuff, like this is their their non-HTTPS logins. This is their F5s that were all over the internet that had you could log in from anywhere. So that kind of stuff can always be used by an attacker during this step of the recon. At this point, it's not necessarily a defensive mitigation. We already start to run into where not everything fits into these 7 steps. It's more of like a proactive measure. You can do things like create policies around sharing the internal information on LinkedIn, especially through your marketing department. Like that dude was from that, posted on their legitimate Facebook page. So it's not like just a user posting selfies of themselves, right? And other policies like using a corporate email for non-business use, because people are constantly doing that. Based on any of the prior breaches that we've seen, that information's out there. Like, you can go through all of the really embarrassing, possibly, breaches that have been out there, and there's been military addresses, there's been Fortune 50 companies that have been using their work email addresses to sign up for this kind of stuff. So the second step is delivery. As we know, most ransomware is distributed through means of phishing. If it's a targeted attack, it'll be based off of the information collected in the recon, or it could just be a mass mailing. And at this step, there are several different defensive mitigations that can be performed. So one is, the first one we'll go over is kind of difficult, depending on where, like the status of what the security is in the organization. But assessing what attachment types are needed and by who, files like these, so JavaScript, screensavers, script files, VB files, all of that kind of stuff, can be extremely harmful and hopefully are rarely exchanged from external sources. Sure, there's use cases, definitely are, but tracking those down is going to be kind of a pain in the ass, but probably worth it if you can figure it out in the long run. You can try and just block all of that stuff at the firewall through, email gateway or whatever. But we'll talk about how to kind of combat that a little bit.
So that list is not exhaustive, right? There's tons of others.
Yeah. That's just the top ones I could think of. HTAs and JavaScript are used a lot by attackers that I've seen. But yeah, those are the top ones, at least, that I could think of.
Yeah.
I know there's a full list out there somewhere of that's maybe 3 or 4 times that.
Yeah, Michael Goff.
Like, you don't want to allow EXEs to come into an attachment, right?
Yeah, or flash files, or
right.
Michael Goff has a list. Oh, and Jason put a link down there in the chat, which we'll add to the Slack as well, with lists of files. So that's cool too.
Perfect. 2, you can scan attachments for types of macros or this kind of stuff. 3, implementing things like blacklists, gray lists. If you have any control over your mail filtering, a lot of people don't take advantage of those. Many of them are free. So things like, well, up until a certain, threshold. So things like Spam House, which is Spam HAUS, DNSBL, have gray lists, which if you don't know what a gray list is, it's like, so I have my own mail server. I turn on gray listing, which means the first time an external email server tries to talk to me and send me email, I'm going to say, no, you need to wait this, random amount of time and try again, because only real email servers do that. A script online isn't going to resend in the amount of time. They're just going to blast you with a crap ton of stuff, and that gray listing is going to block it. When I did a lot of email filtering type sysadmin duties, you would find that a lot of people online have no idea how to properly set up an Exchange server. So depending on how specific you get with the blacklist, gray lists, spam filtering, you'll end up trying to get a lot of people to fix their own mail servers, but it can definitely be useful. 4 is instill the idea of trust but verify to your users. Again, that falls back to policies, training, that kind of stuff. Correct user education is going to be a key step in detecting anything. So the point of user education isn't just to do a checkbox, right? It's to show that you know, like, this type of behavior is what they should be reporting. They're not going to be an expert in security. They're not going to want to be an expert in security. They have their own job to do. That education is just to be supplemental, to kind of arm them with the basic knowledge so that if something weird does happen, they're going to know what channels to go through, that it's easy, that it's, you know, safe to contact somebody in the help desk, security team, whatever. I could go on for hours and rant about that, but I won't. And then 5 is implement ad blocking, and script blocking is difficult to implement a lot of times. Things like no script, just because you have to be you know, fairly sure of yourself in a browser, which a lot of people are not. But for the most part, ad blocking only, you know, has way fewer false positives than no script does. Hopefully, if the domain controller is up, I'll use that one. If not, you can just watch me on the one that I know works. So group policy can be used to set a default application for all of this stuff that I have up on the screen to open with something other than what's intended. So that screensaver file isn't going to be opened by something that can actively exploit it. We can make it open with Notepad, and it'll just be a whole bunch of crap, but it also won't auto execute whatever code they're trying to run on the box. And we're going to do that with DISM. Let's see here. It's the deployment image servicing and management tool, and that's built into Windows. Oh, it did. I think it did reboot. That's a new one. All right, well, we'll see. If not, I'll just go on the other one. Control delete. Haha. Yay, it rebooted.
You're doing well tonight. I mean, the demo
What
gods
time
have
is
been somewhat kind.
Oh shit.
So,
We need to at least get through this one before we end.
okay. If we go a little long, I don't think anybody's going to mind too much.
Okay, perfect.
And if they do, the videos will be available either tomorrow or, you know, before the end of the week, and we'll, you know, definitely have those.
You guys are getting way ahead of yourselves. Well, I mean, they're already talking about Pi-hole. I'm going to talk about DNS sinkholing later, but just kind of mentioning it, so no worries. Right. So on a domain controller or a box that already has default file extensions set up how you want them, there is a tool that you can run that will export those file associations into an XML document. So we're going to open up a elevated command prompt. So for command prompt, you want to run as administrator. You can see all the text all right, can't you? All right. So you're going to type DISM, so DISM, space / online, space / export - default app associations, colon, and actually I'm going to make a ctemp file real quick. and you can too. So ctemp. So default app associations, colon, and then the path of where you want to export the XML file to. So C colon /temp, and then what you want to call it. So we're going to just call it default associations.xml and hit enter. And ta-da, that's super fast. So in this temp directory, we can open up this XML document and open it with Notepad. And here you can see, you know, what the actual file extension is, the program ID of what it opens up with, and then what it's actually called. So this is going to be our first view into group policy. So it is, I think it's under administrative tools. Yeah, so group policy management, or because it's awesome 2012 or above, you can go down here and just like start typing group policy and it'll show up. So group policy, just a brief overview, is basically going to be every possible setting on a Windows operating system that you can even think to modify, and it can all be controlled on the domain controllers and is very easy to mess up. It is very easy to kind of let it get out of control and have a policy for every setting that makes, you know, all of your users take 20 minutes to log in, and can just be a gigantic nightmare to fix if it's done incorrectly. But in this case, we're only going to end up having like 2 group policy objects, which are going to be the containers that the settings are in.
I've had GPOs call GPOs, which call GPOs. I mean, it's incredibly complicated at times if you let it get that way.
Yeah, so little story. The hospital that I worked at, I did all of the domain admin stuff for. And the guy that had created the original domain had absolutely no idea how any of this GPO stuff worked. And it was just mashed together and barely hanging on by a thread. And everybody knew that it was just slow, and they didn't want to touch it because they didn't want to break everything, because we were a 24/7 business. I physically printed out all of the group policy object settings and went through all of them one by one and created a brand new structure, and like moved 5 to 10 computer and user accounts a week or something like that over to it until I was done. It was a gigantic pain. I don't wish that upon my worst enemies, but it was nice and clean, and like my OCD was fixed. So this is a group policy management console. I'm going to get rid of that bouncing little thing. As best practice, if you're in a new domain or trying to fix one, these default domain policies leave alone. Don't put anything in these, just create a new one. It's not that difficult to just create a new group policy and not put anything in these. That way, if you need a blank policy that has nothing in it, that you know is default, that's super easy. So we are going to create a new one. So create a GPO in this domain and link it here. You can have group policy objects that aren't linked places, that just have settings in them. I'm not going to go over all of that because it's not really security related. That's just Windows admin me going off on rants. So we're going to do my new GPO. You can do starter GPOs, but we're not going to do that. Click OK. And there it is. This means at this structure, there's a whole bunch of settings and stuff over here, but anything that falls in the Active Directory structure underneath the domain, anything on the domain is going to use the settings that are in this group policy object. So if you right click on this, you can click on edit. And this is going to be all the settings that you can set. So we are going to go into the computers, and also there's both computer and user configurations. We're going to go into computer configuration, policies, administrative templates, Windows components, move this thing over, File Explorer, and here you have set a default associations configuration file. So if we go back to this XML file, I'm going to copy this top one, paste this, and we are going to turn JavaScript files into paint programs. So anything on the, if you were to set this where it is, and as soon as a computer gets an updated version of this group policy, anything that has a JavaScript extension is going to open with Paint by default. One, don't do any of this without extensive proper planning, because it could really, really mess up anybody that uses anything JavaScript related. But for this case, it's our lab, right? So YOLO. And we are going to save this in our temp file. We are also going to save, let's see here. So we'll go back into this. So we'll go in and we'll enable the setting. Yeah, there we go. And this is where the configuration file needs to be saved. So see Windows System 32. So we're going to copy that. See Windows System 32. And there's our default associations in there. Let me make sure that's spelled correctly. Default associations. Default associations. Okay. And then we'll go, oh, also if you need to know, this is kind of a hard way to find the actual command, but this is what we typed in earlier, this dism command. So we can hit apply on this. And you see this changes to enabled. Hit OK. And then we can close out of this. I don't know for sure that this is going to take effect right away, but we can try. Actually, let's do this. So to force a group policy settings to apply to a computer, you can go to a command prompt and type gp update/force. And I don't know if this is going to make me reboot or not. Sometimes it does, depending on the setting that's being applied. Okay, so hopefully this works. We're going to do a new file. We'll just do a text document. Oh, shit. Hold on. So what you notice is there's no file extension here. This is in the view settings. There we go. We want to show the file extensions. Yeah. So we are going to rename this. I hope this live demo works.js. Yes. Haha. Oh, nope. Might have to reboot this box to get it to work, because this is technically supposed to show the little paint icon and actually say Microsoft Paint right here. Feel free to reboot. I don't want to make you guys too late, unless you want to kind of just stay around for a couple minutes while I reboot. It's up to you.
So Jason says there's a rsop.msc that will show you applied policies as well for troubleshooting.
Yep.
Wasn't there like a GP result or something that would also show you back in old timey days?
I think they
enabled.
So there are two different tools that have both been around, and I can't remember what each does. RSOP is result in set of policy.
Okay.
You can run that on boxes and user accounts that you're not actually on.
Right. Okay.
I think GP result does it to the one that you're logged on to.
Yeah, he says it'll dump an HTML report if you use the /h switch. So RSOP is pretty and graphical. Oh. I don't hate me some graphicals. So
why don't you have more associations? You know, I had somebody in my one class ask that as well, and I have absolutely no idea. So the only thing I did nothing different. All I did was I was logged in as domain admin. Oh, just 2016 has less. That makes sense. VMPCat, do you have 2016 or 2012?
2016, I think they really started hardening it and lowering the number of associations.
No, I have 2012.
Oh.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I have the paint
populated it though, right?
The paint program's on here, but the only associations that came up for default associations were for Google Chrome.
That's so weird. I'm going to have to figure out why. Because I had somebody else ask that too. I'm like, see, it did take a reboot. Ta-da.
Didn't Michael Goff, there you go. Okay, Michael Goff also suggested you can make it, you can set all those file associations to open with Notepad or something.
Yeah, I just did paint just because it was the one on the top.
Yeah, no, I completely understand.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to figure out what that is. Desktop experience, maybe. Yeah, so it took a reboot, but I mean, eventually it would populate, I'm assuming, to everything that is underneath that spot in group policy. But yeah, you can open it with anything that isn't JavaScript now. And you can do that really for any of those file extensions. It would just probably break a lot if you did it without any prior planning.
Yeah, just don't use it for something like Microsoft Office or something, because
Right.
the malicious JavaScript in there. So,
or if you really, really, really want to mess up somewhere, just change all the default file associations for everything and just nope out. Yeah. So I made it to slide 13. We have a whole lot more to go. So I hope I didn't go off on too many tangents. Does anybody have any more questions?
I've got one.
Go for it.
If you did open up with Notepad instead of Paint, would you actually see the JavaScript source code, or would it just be gibberish?
I think it's just gibberish.
Okay.
It's like the blocks and question mark Unicode stuff.
Okay.
That's everybody's homework for tonight. Have it open in a different program other than Paint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to give homework. You're right.
Make massive amounts of snapshots when you're doing your yeah, that's one thing, I guess. If we're all doing it in VMs and stuff, make sure you take a ton of snapshots, because if you do screw something up, then you can always revert to snapshots. So that's always a nice, safe way.
Snapshot really, really saved me. Just so late, probably class 3 or 4, we'll go over LAPS, which is local admin password solution. And it, I did not know it actually changes your domain admin password. So yeah, we'll go over all that though. So yay, class 1's done.
Cool.